Hey there, I'm Heidi Rue, and this is the Atlanta Voiceover Studio and Pro Voiceover Training podcast. And Atlanta Voiceover Studio and Pro Voiceover Training, they exist to give you the resources that you need to create the voiceover career that you want. And this is one of the resources, the podcast. On this podcast, you'll find industry professionals sharing insight into the industry that can help you move forward in your career. So today I'm talking with Christi Bowen. So excited to have her here. Christi actually lives in Nashville, Tennessee, but she's here visiting us in Atlanta. So we're so glad to see her. And she started working as a full-time voiceover talent back in 2011, but that's after this long career in media too. So that was just part of this kind of her whole journey, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. But she created also a VO workout group in Nashville that has grown to over 85 members, maybe more at this point. I think that was a bio, so it's probably more at this point.
Yeah, we're holding steady around that number.
Okay. And then she's also a producer for Virtual VO Atlanta. She's the director of corporate and e-learning for ACM Talent Management, which I'm on, and she's been a great addition. And so welcome, Christi.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and actually see people in person.
I know. It's crazy. And it's like,
great.
Feels weird to take off the mask. It's
yes,
like,
it does.
Oh, gosh. I'm actually seeing your lips. It feels so weird.
I know. I had to put on lipstick, which I don't have to do anymore.
Yeah. Well, Christi, I just barely touched on your journey into full-time voiceover. Can you kind of share a little bit more? Because it actually began in radio, right?
Yes. I went to the University of Florida. Go Gators.
Go Gators. Chomp, chomp.
And I worked at the radio station. And while I was a DJ, because I thought that was going to be really cool, I didn't like that and enjoy that as much as I enjoyed writing, producing, and voicing the commercials. I ended up becoming the assistant production director and then temporary production director while literally I graduated on a Saturday and went to work on Monday.
Wow.
And I had one day of, quote, freedom because the production director had left. And so they put me in that position for a little while until they found a permanent replacement. And I knew I didn't want to necessarily stay in radio, but I really liked what I was doing. Moved up to Nashville because I had done a internship up there, because that's where my mom lived, and got hired by the company once I was ready to go into full time. Once I graduated, and I kind of replaced, or basically I added video to the component because we were still writing and producing the commercials for the cable company I worked for. I just added the video part to it. So it was the same thing. And then I kind of got a little bit away from voiceovers because I started doing more producing and more, video production of various forms and different positions within the video production world. Worked on a couple of feature films out in LA and Hollywood, and then came back to Nashville because I was working, I had gotten engaged, and the guy I had gotten married to and I were both working for a production company based in Nashville. We worked there for 12 years. It was a company that it's kind of strange. It had a contract with the Department of Defense. Huh. So we produced what were called command information, or to you and me, known as public service announcements for the military overseas.
Oh.
So we would do, 250 television spots and 300 or 400 radio spots a year.
Wow.
For them. And of course, casting and writing and all the other things that go along with that. We had a full-time audio producer. He basically did all the TV voiceover casting as well as all the producing of the radio spots. And he and I got along really well. We talked about stuff. I would sit in on the voiceover sessions, and I just, we just hit it off. And he knew my background in radio, and he would have me fill in a lot, say, hey, come up and cut this for me real quick. And it kind of got me the taste, again, of voiceover. But I couldn't do it too much because the client saw that as double dipping. We could do it every now and then, but I couldn't do it a lot. But I really started to like it. And, of course, it was a Department of Defense contract. It was around 2008. The whole world was going crazy. They had to cut their budgets. And I saw the writing on the wall and went, it's time to start doing something else. Yeah. Kind of really looking into what I wanted to do. And I knew I didn't want to keep just doing video production. I had a new baby. I didn't want to do the 14, 15-hour days, the unpredictable schedule. And I thought, let's try this voiceover thing. Got back in doing some classes and just started working, and it never stopped.
Yeah.
And so when my last day at that company was, I went home the next day and been full-time ever since.
That's
So
awesome.
it's been a great ride. I've been very lucky, and I know that.
Yeah, that's
So
great. Do you remember the first thing that you booked?
yes, it was for L'Oreal.
Oh,
It was
wow.
a Voice 123 at the time, which was one of the newer pay-to-play sites,
Mhm.
and I had auditioned for 3 things in my office at the time, and I remember booking that one. I
Wow.
loved it, and it was for their new hair color, Enoa is what they called it, and it was to train. It was more of it wasn't a commercial. It was to
Uh-huh.
train their stylists, L'Oreal
Mm,
related stylists on how to use the new hair coloring.
yeah.
And it was it must have been like a half-hour training because they were putting it
Wow.
on a DVD
Yeah.
and everything. And so I booked that. Luckily, I didn't have my studio set up at that point. I was getting there at home, but it wasn't quite ready.
Mhm.
But of course, I'd been working for 12 years with the audio post house that we had in the building where I worked. And I just went up to them and said, "Hey guys, could you help me out?" They're like, "Absolutely." So they recorded it for me. So my first session
Oh,
was in this beautiful big booth with an engineer, the whole 9 yards. It was not totally realistic, but it worked.
that is so
So
awesome.
yeah, it was great.
And then did you get agents after that, or how did your voiceover career kinda take over from there?
Mostly it was through pay-to-play sites or
Mhm.
just reaching out to people.
Yeah.
At the time, Facebook groups weren't really a thing yet, and and the only reason I'm mentioning this is the University of Florida tried something called the Gator Nation Network, which was
Okay.
their answer to like Facebook type of thing and to connect all their people. And I ended up meeting like 3 different people on that because I had just
Wow.
posted that, this is what I did and everything else.
Yeah.
And I got 3 clients from it, one of whom is still a client to this day. And, I just would reach out and kind of do my own marketing.
Yeah.
A lot of it was pay to play sites,
Uh-huh.
honestly, to begin with, and just keeping
Mhm.
those clients and continuously keeping them. I did reach out to some agents, got a Nashville agent pretty
Mhm.
quickly. They don't do a lot of voiceover though.
Mhm.
And I never really sought out LA or New York yet because I just didn't think I had enough experience and I wanted to get better demos.
Mhm.
So I didn't really quite go that far, but I did get some local agents and
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's so interesting because we always tell students, we're like, listen, some of the first jobs that you book are probably going to be from people that you know. And so I
mhm.
love that you already reached out
Yeah.
to people within your network, Gator Nation network.
Yes.
So
And
it's
also
the
local
best.
producers and people I had known.
Hmm.
I just reached out to anybody and everybody once I started doing it,
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
that was part of it.
Now, I know, to be honest with you, Christy, I know of you more from like e-learning. Like
Mhm.
your reputation is great in that area. And I know that you do more than just that type of genre
Yes.
of voiceover. And I'd like to get some e-learning insight as well. But as a voice talent, if somebody's like just beginning or if they've begun and they're kind of like, okay, what kind of genre should I focus on? What
Mhm.
we get asked a lot about that. After kind of that foundational commercial training, how do you even figure out which genre you should pursue?
I think a lot of it has to do with your background that you already have.
Mm.
In my case, I like doing commercials and things, but everyone kept telling me I have a very instructional kind of voice. And also, the client that I got from knowing the Gator, he actually happened to run a company that did e-learning. So
Wow.
that's kind of how I fell into that. But
Yeah.
it was a really good fit. I enjoyed the work. I think it's also what you really like to do, how you feel about yourself as a person. Do you see yourself as a teacher? Do you see yourself as someone who has lots of characters inside you, and you just think video games and animation is your deal? Do you have right now? Do you feel like you can be very conversational? Do people trust you and if you mention something in conversation with any of your family or friends, and then do they come back to you later and say, "Hey, I tried that thing you said," then you're probably good for commercial because
Yeah.
you're actually selling them on something without trying to sell them. I
Mhm.
think that you have to figure out what you're comfortable with as a person, and I think that helps inform what genres you're good at. There's some people that just are not or don't feel that they're very good teachers. And I think it takes a little bit of a teaching mindset to excel in explainer videos or
Mhm.
e-learning.
Yeah.
Also, it depends on how comfortable you are being in the booth for certain lengths of time. Do you really want to tell stories and have a few characters and you don't mind recording hours on end. That audiobooks, hello. I mean, it's
Right.
just, they're screaming for you.
Totally.
If you don't really do many character voices, but you still like that length of time and the predictability, then maybe nonfiction audiobooks. I think it really depends on who you are as a person and what stories you want to tell. And I think what some of your teachers and other people in the industry kind of respond to you for. What do they say you have a nice voice for? Or, hey, I bet, I could hear you read the phone book. Well, that's okay, but, there's not a lot of money in that. So,
Right.
what kinds of things?
What is a phone book? I don't
exactly.
even know.
It's like a phone book?
Yeah.
But, it's just, I think one of those things that it helps when you find out from others in the business what they think you might have a good sound for.
Mm-hmm.
Because I get told all the time, you have a very clear diction and you're very articulate. And that probably leans more towards training of some kind, because when you can be a little more relaxed, as I get told all the time, I've told, go have a glass of wine and then come and record this, for commercial, because right now that is what is selling, is the very relaxed, natural speech. And so it depends on what type of speech you have and what type of, how you feel about yourself, I think is the genre that you should explore. And I think there's nothing wrong in exploring anything to find out if you have a fit for it, because you might get down that road and say, oh my gosh, I can't stand that. That's not what I want to do anymore.
Right.
I don't want to be in the booth hours on end. I like to get in and get out.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything over 5 minutes long. I know lots of people that way. It just depends on how you feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my answer to that.
It's a great answer. And e-learning, I know that a lot of people are like, well, how do you even get into it? Because it's not something that typically comes from like your regular voiceover agents.
Right.
And for you happen to make that contact with a guy that was head over an e-learning company. So is that true? Do you have to kind of seek out your own jobs with e-learning, or?
Yeah, it's more... My position at ACM is to try to get, as Director of Corporate and E-Learning, is to try to get more work for the management company that we are, but, for the roster of talent like you, and we've actually hired you, so excited. But, and it's difficult. E-learning is a different animal within the voiceover world in general, even more than audiobooks, because you're dealing business to business. And so there's just this different mindset when you're dealing with people, because when it comes to almost every other genre, including audiobooks, frankly, agents and the selling, there's something you're selling there. Audiobooks, you're trying to get more people to buy the audiobook. So there's still that selling capacity. And, for the bigger work, agents will sometimes, do that. But when it comes to e-learning, it's so business to business oriented that people they'll see you as a vendor. You won't be seen as, so when you're trying to reach out, it's more effective, and most people don't go to agents that are looking for e-learning work. They have that's not a mindset. The creative part of things is not the Hollywood, like I like to call it, the Hollywood aspect of what we do is so foreign to most people having anything to do with training and e-learning in the business world.
Gotcha.
It's too Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's just something that they don't understand. It's not the world they live in. So they like to deal with a business to another business. So if you're reaching out on your own, which is what most people do, and that's how most people find success with e-learning, is you're reaching out as your business to their business. You want to be a trusted vendor. If they need different things, let's say I'm on their roster, and then one day they come to me and say, hey, you did that e-learning for so-and-so company. This time they've decided to split it up. They want to use a guy this time. Do you know anybody you trust? And then you're still the first person they come to ask that question. You supply them that other vendor, and they're excited by it. That's wonderful. You're still their go-to person. That's kind of how e-learning works.
Yeah.
There are some things that go to agents, especially if it's really, really big work. But, let's say it's a training that came down to maybe somebody in marketing or in the advertising area that is contacted and says, hey, yeah, we've got this training corporate thing. I know you just did our commercials, or I know you just did our things for online, but now we have more of a instructional thing. Or the big boss came down and said that we want to do this and we have no idea where to begin. Can you help us?
Yeah.
They might go to an agent
Okay.
with that question to say, do you know somebody? But generally that doesn't happen as much. And they're not set up like an advertising agency or, agents know they have to go to casting directors or to talent agencies. There's just that's how the business works.
Yeah.
It's not really that way, especially since in most companies, no two companies are set up alike. Sometimes it falls under HR. Sometimes it falls under the learning and development person. Sometimes it's the training people. Sometimes it's instructional designers, and they have their own entire entity for training. And then there are freelance people they hire from that. Other times it's just one guy or gal in whatever company. Somebody says, oh yeah, we just changed our computer system. We have to train all 400 employees. How do we do that? They're like, well, somebody in HR will be like, well, okay, let's see, how do we do that? And then they'll hire a freelancer, and then who hires us. So I mean, and because every of the billions of companies there are out there have different ways of doing things.
Yeah,
they have no idea what agents are. I mean, again, bigger companies that have worked with an agent in the past might.
Yeah,
but for us, it's best to reach out ourselves to do that work.
For people that so for instance, say that somebody comes from, they're a nurse for, however long, and they really want to get into voiceover. One of the things that we've said is like, always use whatever you have in your past to help with your voiceover career. So is that something when somebody's going to pitch an e-learning company, is that something really helpful for them to say, listen, I'm a nurse, so I have experience with all these medical terms or whatever the case may be?
Absolutely. Any experience you have. So if you're starting out with this, if you had experience, let's say you used to be a bank teller. I mean, even if it was something as simple as a bank teller or even a bagger at a grocery store, but the inner workings of how a grocery store works. Those are the kinds of companies you reach out to first in e-learning, because you can say, I already understand. I am a subject matter expert. You're paying me to sound like a subject matter expert because I'm supposed to, most of the time in e-learning, you are a representative of the company in some way. You're the one who is speaking for the company. Sometimes you might actually have a character and introduce yourself. Yeah. Hi, I'm Marissa. I'm in the training department, and I'm here to teach you how to do blah, blah, blah today, but you're still a representative of the company. And if you have insight into what that company does, even if it's peripheral, you're going to have a leg up. You're probably going to understand the acronyms. You're going to understand the vernacular. You're going to understand the mindset of the audience you're speaking to. So if you happen to have been a nurse, oh, goodness gracious, of course, that's wonderful when it comes to medical, because medical is its own special animal within e-learning, and there are different degrees of medical. Sometimes there's medical devices. Sometimes there's very minimal kind of medical that's just kind of touching this top surface. Yeah. And then there's the deep, deep medical, like training doctors, and you have to sound like you are in med school right along with them.
Yeah.
And so, there's different levels to that too. And you have to understand how to speak their language.
Yeah.
And if you have that already in you because you basically speak that language, then capitalize on it. And those are the first companies I would go after.
Yeah.
I mean, if it, I don't have a lot of other experience and other things because I've pretty much been in media all my, working days. I have a few other things I've done. And, like florist. I was a florist for a little while. So, if there was any training for florists, I kind of understand what their mindset is and how a florist shop works. So if you have any experience or you're still in it day to day, because many people get into e-learning that are still 9 to 5, use that. Hit up every right that's like yours that, I guess, as long as you don't have, conflicts.
Right.
If there are peripheral things to that, hit them up. That's exactly where I would start first. Get your foothold in, learn the business of e-learning, how it works, have clients, the client interaction. Then you build from there, because then you can say, my clients are X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And that helps you get more clients. So.
Great. So helpful.
Yeah. Thank
you. Voiceover, the industry, we always say, like, I feel like the actual skill of voiceover is like a small percentage, to be honest with you, because some of the toughest things in voiceover happens outside of that, with the mental resiliency and all the things that we have to learn as we go. And so what's been one of the toughest lessons that you've had to learn in voiceover?
Oh, boy. I'm not sure if I I'm trying to think of one, and I'm trying to think how many have there been.
I know.
I think the fact that it is, I knew this going in, but I think living it, this is a business that you're pretty much on all the time. Every day, I think to me, it's every day I don't work, I don't get paid. And so therefore, when it comes to family demands or anything else that, happens, that you have to realize that you are running a business. And if you happen to be part-time or full-time at another job, making the switch to full-time voiceover, you have to understand that it is a business. You will be wearing all the hats all the time. You will never not be wearing the hats. I think that's just the toughest lesson to learn for me, because it means you're always on. I take weekends off, and I pretty much don't even get texts or emails or anything else. Occasionally I do. Last Sunday before I came here, I did 4 jobs, which I did only because the fact that I knew I wasn't going to be at home for 2 days. But I think it's realizing that, yes, it may be a dream, and to work for yourself and no longer be working for the man that I'm working for now kind of mentality. After a while, you realize that you're the one who has to pay for all the toilet paper, and it's, and the electricity all the time, and keeping up with all the bookkeeping, and keeping up with the marketing, which is the hardest and longest part of any day.
Yeah.
Managing all the different things you have to do and the ups and downs with it. I think that's the toughest lesson for most people to learn. I kind of feel like I got a little lucky with it because I was able just to slide from one thing into another. And it just kind of kept coming to me. But there's that juggling in the mindset of keeping all my records straight. And I'm a very highly organized person. And for people, I see a lot of my friends who are not struggling with just trying to keep up with everything. And I think that's a very hard lesson to learn when we get enamored by the performance aspect of voiceover, and I might be able to be heard on the radio or TV, and my family can hear me and see me. And that's great. First and foremost, you're running a business. And how does that work for you to do everything else you have to do for it? And I think that's the toughest lesson to learn.
Yeah, so true.
So,
well, Christi, how can people find you? How can they connect with you, whether social media or, just to be able to connect to you and follow your journey and everything? So.
I would love for people to connect with me. I am pretty easy to find. My website is ChristiBowen.com, but it's CHRISTI Bowen, BOWEN.com. And on there it has my links to my social media. I'm on Instagram and Twitter a little bit. I don't keep up with it like I should. And Facebook. I have, a Facebook page, and most of it's Christi Bowen, VO. And on my website, you can find out more about me and hear my demos and that kind of thing if they have questions. And my email's on there as well, so they can keep up with me and reach out if they have any questions.
Awesome. And we'll link everything within the show notes too. So thank you so much, Christi, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.